Hi, and welcome to the Arrow Bandwidth series. We're here with the Dell APEX team today to talk about the Dell APEX go-to-market, their strategy, and how we best engage with partners, the benefits and successes that we can jointly win together. For starters, I'm Dominic Vincent. I'm the business sector manager that runs the Dell practice at Arrow. We're here with a couple of the guys from the APEX team and also Steve from Arrow as well. So, Steve.
Thank you very much, Dom. Yeah, I'm Steve Horobin. I manage the technical pre-sales team here at Arrow, associated with the modern data center practice. Looking forward to the discussion today with the Dell guys all about APEX.
Great. My name's Adam Lawton. I'm the APEX partner specialist for the UK, based in sunny Manchester.
There you go. And morning, everyone, or well, not morning, actually. Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Goodley. I'm the sales and strategy leader for APEX across EMEA and also from sunny Manchester.
Lovely, and thank you for being with us today. It's great to have you. I guess first of all, for our partners, really, what is APEX? How would you define it? And what do you want the message to be to our partner base?
It's a great starter. I'll take that one if that's okay. So yeah, APEX has been around as an offering in the market for probably a couple of years now. It very much, when it first came out, it was more about the consumption model side of things. And last year at Dell Technologies World, we started to pivot to become a bit more all-encompassing. So we have a vision around multi-cloud by design, which really is about giving our customers the ultimate choice about where they place their workloads. So it's about aligning the business costs, the business practice, to have the right location and the right way of consuming the technology that they need to be successful at the end of the day. Now, we've pivoted that from being just around consumption, but also to including modern cloud models as well. So we have these multiple different concepts, and we've you may have heard of, we've got kind of 3 pillars that we really go to market with around APEX, and that hopefully will simplify it for everybody, because I understand, not everybody's got it from day one. Now, the first one is actually what we do around multi-cloud. So we've invested in our software-defined technologies, and effectively we're making those available in those public cloud marketplaces, so like AWS, like Azure, so customers can utilize and add value to those environments. So it's not just about taking some great technology and deploying it in the public cloud. Why would you do that? What's going to be the benefit to the customer? At the end of the day, it's about kind of threefold. The first one is about, well, let's help them simplify their operations. So we have a common set of tools, both on-premise and in the public cloud, which again makes life a little bit easier. It's about adding some value to that environment too, so we're enhancing the underlying performance and availability of those resources, and then we're also giving them the choice of how they consume it. So we can do it either consume via that public marketplace, so they can use some of their committed cloud spend, for example. We can do it as a bring your own license, which allows us to resell it in a traditional manner, or we can also look at to incorporate it into a TLA as well. Just gives us, and that's the first pillar. The second pillar is actually what we do around the hybrid cloud. So it's going the other way. So the first one, if you think about it, is about really where we're taking what we do on the ground and making that available in the public cloud. So we call it ground to cloud. The opposite of that is what we call cloud to ground. That's where we take the cloud ecosystems and make those available on premise. So we've invested in a series of technology called APEX Cloud Platform, which we're already having great success with in the UK and across EMEA with, which really helps customers simplify the deployment of those hybrid ecosystems on-premise in a simple turnkey fashion using common infrastructure and software. And again, they have the choice of how they consume that, whether they want to do it via a subscription methodology, which aligns often to the software side of things, or via a traditional CapEx route to market. And I think I'll let Matt explain the third one, which is our as-a-service methodology.
Yeah, which again, we're really simplifying that message. And the third pillar is about APEX subscriptions. And that is about really paying for what you consume and paying for what you consume. And it's really about understanding those right workloads and having the right commercial model to actually meet those aims as well. So ultimately, you're paying for what you consume, very much like customers are already doing within the public cloud. And I think that fits in very, very nicely into the APEX Cloud Platform message, which is about consistency. It's a consistency between what customers are doing in the public cloud and having that consistency back into the private cloud, whether that by technology or whether it by the commercial model as well. So a really, hopefully, a very simple message, which we're accelerating that go-to-market with.
Brilliant. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's very clear on the direction and what those three pillars are. I think, from my perspective, what is quite interesting is all encompassing from a hybrid multi-cloud sort of go-to-market. You mentioned about the ability to have a direct attach into the cloud. Does that mean that Apex is native within the hyperscalers, or your Dell software is native within the hyperscalers now?
Yeah, it is. So as I said, with the multi-cloud offers, it's taken some of our best-in-breed software-defined technologies, and these are all things that are really architected around accelerating that hyperscaler environment. So it's not a case of us, for example, sorry for getting technical, but we're not sticking a 2-controller array into and making that work in a hyperscaler environment, because that has challenges in its own right in terms of scalability and performance. What we're doing is leveraging our scale-out technologies, which really work well in those hyperscale environments. So technologies that hopefully our customers and partners will be familiar with, like PowerFlex, like PowerScale, and our PowerProtect portfolio as well. So these are well-known and trusted technologies that they can leverage. And again, we're just extending that reach into that public cloud market, both in the marketplace or just as a deployment option as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I think it gives the partner that ability to give their customers a cloud-like experience, regardless of whether it's on premises or co-located or your as-a-service offering. So
I think it also gives us the ability to say yes to most questions, right? Which I think is a really powerful message. Instead of like that kind of, maybe, it's kind of like, yeah, we can actually accommodate that. And on the back end of that, we can also accommodate the right commercial model. So, we're not saying everything has to be, subscription. I'd love everything to be subscription, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have to be. It's a choice about how you consume that technology as well. And I think that's a really important message too. We're not just saying this is the answer. There's many different answers and a couple of different answers about how you ultimately consume that technology as well.
Yeah, I think that was one of the questions I'd like to bring in now, if you don't mind, to go back to your first position on Apex, so the first clarification, I guess, on that. When we're looking at people buying technology, buying, I guess, is the wrong word these days, so people acquiring technology and then paying for it on a consumption-based model or paying on the drip or whatever you want to call it. From the Dell standpoint then, given your portfolio of offerings, are they all available now through the Apex model?
Pretty much, yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the great pieces of feedback we've had from our customers and our partners. And when we talk about what we're doing in terms of simplification, that feedback's been super important. So what we're basically saying is you can select what product you want from our ISG portfolio in particular, but we also have some CSG offers, some client offers as well. But we can take whatever portfolio product it is that you want to consume. We look at then, well, how long do you want to consume it for? And then it's a case of, well, actually, then we'll do some other things. We'll look at, well, how much do you want to utilize from day one? How much do you want to have as on-demand capacity? And that's pretty much it. And then we'll work out a consumption model with you. And it gives the customer ultimately the maximum flexibility. We're not saying for hybrid clouds, you have to choose that product, or we're saying for storage, it has to be that technology with this configuration.
Yeah, you need that flexibility, don't you?
The customers the choice, and actually that's the feedback they're giving us. Actually, it's nice sometimes having those t-shirt size type configurations, but at the end of the day, we end up customizing them, and that creates a lot of churn. And at the end of the day, they just want to consume a specific technology or group of technologies to create that solution.
Sure. So if we're looking at the server-based technology, there's everything is in, there's nothing out on server-based.
No.
And then if we move to the storage-based technology, again, everything's in on that side of it. And then if we look at the networking to bring it all together, that's all included as well. So it's a great proposition.
We can networking, so we don't do a specific offer around networking. What we tend to do with networking is, because I don't think anyone's really figured out how to meter a networking switch effectively yet.
Right.
And might be saying a little bit too much, but what we tend to do is build that into the cost of the overarching solution. So if it's going with HCI or if it's going with storage or data protection, we'll bake that into the cost and meter it as part of that.
I think the point is that customers, partners are what they're doing right now on a CapEx deal, what their usual course of business is, they're defining a config. They're defining a config with partners, with yourselves, with ourselves as well. You're building that config. What we're doing is taking that config, and I don't want to call it a sausage factory because it's not. It's our pricing tool, okay? But we're basically taking that config and running it through our pricing tools. So the customers still have that architectural control, okay? So I think that's super important. So, all our customers have the ability to say, look, I want this, this, and this. I'm not a technologist. We all know I'm not a technologist, right? I talk about flashing lights and everything else. But it's up to the customers and your partners and Distis and Dell to build that config, and then we will provide you that Apex wrap, if you like, that commercial model, which is, hopefully to benefit of our customers and to our partners as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and I've been in the IT business many, many years. I won't say exactly how many, but I know from working with many, many clients, when they start off a project, they start and have a look at it to see how much compute it's going to require, how much storage is going to require, how many SAN ports are going to be involved. They start and build great big spreadsheets and put it all together and put the proposition into the financial director and the IT director, and then you get approval and away you go. And you spend millions potentially on all of this equipment that sits on the data center floor from day one. Nobody consumes or touches it. 6 months down the road, you might have something that's a minimum viable product or offering. And then a year down the road, you've got something that you can take to market. And there's a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted resource. And it's great to get to a point now where you can consume what you want with the Apex banner, I think.
Let me just take that point. And look, we all know that customers ultimately put more capacity, whether that be compute capacity or storage capacity or network capacity, whatever, on the floor than what they require, because they're taking out an insurance policy, right? They go, what happens if I grow a little bit more? And, but if you look at the utilization of boxes, then, you're not going to get to, 80, 90% utilization until probably year 4, year 5 of utilization.
Right. So,
and you look at the historical or the traditional procurement methods, and it's like, here you go, I'll give you a check on day one. Here's a PO for whatever it is. But you're not utilizing all that capacity. So, the mindset is changing within the marketplace to say, actually, there's a better way of doing this. And I think we've all got to put our hands up. We've got to thank the hyperscalers for this, right? They've got this mindset going that you're going to pay for what you consume, and we all do that in our private lives as well. Yeah. It's just translating into business life.
Because it's changed a lot, though, hasn't it? Sorry interrupting you there. No, the way people originally were looking at the cloud, going back at its conception, I guess, and it was a way of bursting into the cloud. So you had your on-prem solution, your on-prem capabilities, but then you needed that extra capacity for ad hoc requirements, so people could burst into the cloud.
Yep.
But then people started to think, this cloud thing is actually quite good. So I'll start in the cloud and grow from there. But then we get full circle now. We're getting back to people saying, well, actually, I want the cloud model, but I want it on-prem with my own gear. Yeah. And that's perfectly fitting in.
Exactly the point, right? And I talk about this, I know Adam talks about this loads, and it's not about the technology, whatever. It's about the operating model. Yeah. Okay, it's about the cloud-like operating model.
That's right.
And simplistically, if you boil it back down to the principle of this, is that Dell are coming to market with the Apex offerings, which is the operating model which customers are benefiting from in the hyperscalers, and we're saying, come and benefit from that same model in your private cloud.
Yeah.
That's it. And then you can start talking about workloads. You said, actually, people are moving some stuff back and repatriation. Well, yes, because from my point of view, and I think from the market's point of view, it's actually beneficial to have a lot of those workloads, on-prem.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately where the market is going, and that's why we're here today, right?
Cyclic marketplace, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But to expand that slightly, I think the great thing about our Apex portfolio, and you have to think of it as Apex as a portfolio, not as a product, is that it gives our customers and partners the choice ultimately. So is the right place for it to run in the public cloud? Yes, great, we've got an offering. Is it a hybrid cloud solution? Yes, great, we've got an offering. Yeah. Actually, is it more about an operating model conversation? Great, we've got the offering. We're not having to pinhole customers into one particular bracket or another because it's the only thing we do.
Sure.
So the great thing about it is that strength of that portfolio and the breadth. It gives ultimately that maximum flexibility out there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Tom.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, just to pick up on that point is you've got that flexibility and freedom to do what you need to do from, whether you're starting small or start big, and whether you need to change that through the life cycle of your Apex subscription or whatever the subscription you'd have. But I think, for us as Arrow and how we work with partners, that gives us another sort of route to market, an ability to sort of spread across our whole portfolio, not just the Dell portfolio, but obviously that's where we're looking to focus. But it helps with our other avenues of our business, But at the end of the day, it also maps into what we stand for as Arrow is, that future-proofing, that 5 years out piece. You're doing that every day, and that's where we want to give those partners that freedom to be able to move with their business and become agile and future-proofing.
Yeah, I think partners can and should be confident in us and yourselves in this as well. They're not necessarily having to be tied into one thing or another. It gives them that flexibility, and it allows them to be holistic with their customer, importantly, and retain that real trusted advisor status that gives them that real credibility. So they're not just trying to shoehorn them into one direction. They can actually have that open conversation with the customer. Actually, where is the best place to run this? What's the best way to consume it? And then we can work with them to achieve that.
And we've seen that firsthand, where we've been working with partners that have looked at an on-premise server environment for their managed service that they offer. But actually, when we look back at it, it's like, well, actually, we could, instead of you doing that in a CapEx, we could do that OpEx and look at APEX as a model. And it completely changed the dynamic of the way that we were looking at how they support their customers. And it just helped with their cost modeling. And if anything, they wanted to get their stuff off the books, right? They don't want that kit there.
They don't, but also I think you kind of alluded to a really important point there, which is about how their business runs, right? So it's not just about, here you go, here's a load of kit, and that's, we're getting away from a speeds and feeds conversation and, how much capacity do you require? It's like, well, actually, how do you run your business, and what is the workload on this particular piece of kit, and how therefore you're going to match your cost associated with that kit to maybe the revenue generated by that kit, which is really relevant in a sort of a managed services environment. So by having a different kind of commercial conversation, you're getting away from that traditional IT conversation, which is still important, don't get me wrong, but actually you get really underneath the bonnet of a customer and understand their workloads and actually more about their business. And that, I think, when you're talking about how partners can add value to customers, I think that's also super important, because the more you understand about a customer, the more value you can ultimately, add to that customer as well.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's a really important point.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that's worth bringing into this is the life cycle of the equipment as well. We're all talking about sustainability these days and what happens to equipment. So talk me through that kind of life cycle. If a customer has taken on board the APEX model, he's taken the servers, he's taken his storage, networking potentially as well, as we've mentioned. When you're looking at a 3 or 5 year program, when we get the end of that program minus 6 months, then what are the options the customer has at that point?
So with a 3 year, they have the option to extend and the lifetime of the project. At 5 years, that's kind of our maximum term that we do, and at the end of that term, we will take that equipment back.
Right.
Now, there's some great things we can do in terms. Obviously, we can recontract around the new APEX model with refresh built in. But the good thing about that is, that technology at the end of year 5 is probably coming to the end of its kind of useful lifespan. Obviously, it can be more useful, but by that time, most things are getting a bit long in the tooth, and we want to start looking at a technology refresh. That's the typical cycle we tend to see these days, 3 to 5 years. Obviously, in some sectors, it's up to 7 or 8, depending on what they're doing. But at the end of that year 5 period, we'll look to bring it back. Part of that is we'll bring that equipment back in-house and recycle it effectively. That's one of our kind of commitments that we've kind of made. And we also look to repurpose as well, if we can as well. But it's the whole thing is about making sure that the customer's actually still going to be able to get maximum value. At the end of the term, we often get asked, can we buy it? And the answer at the minute is no. So,
I think, it's an interesting part there, right, is there's the fact that, when you look at if they're taking a subscription service, they're not actually having the kit on the ground sometimes, right? So you talk about these tech refresh cycles. Actually, they're not tech refreshing at all. They've got their environment, and for anything, Dell's helping them not to tech refresh. You're keeping that and maintaining that service.
Yeah, in very simplistic terms, it's almost a bit like a phone contract. When you get to the end of your contract, you get a new device. It could be a bit like that.
Yeah. Well, we do it we do it in our personal lives, right?
Yeah,
it's like, I'm probably due a new phone.
IT is becoming very much a utility, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like we've got, as you say, phone contracts at home, you've got your water contracts and electricity and gas and whatever. The IT is becoming very much another utility.
Yeah, but we also see it move really quickly, right? You look at, AI, everyone says, the next version of AI will be 2 years' time, so people will be looking to refresh that kit even quicker than they are right now. So, and if you've bought that on CapEx traditionally, then you kind of think, well, actually, I'm going to depreciate this asset over 4 or 5 years, and I've still got that cost on my balance sheet. If you have a subscription for, we will do a 1-year subscription for storage and hyper-converged, if that's the use case. We tend to see customers do longer than that, but we will do 1-year subscription. So, we're giving customers a lot more flexibility around their business, and saying, actually, we give them the ability to have the latest and greatest technology sooner, compared to maybe a CapEx transaction where, customer is still depreciating that asset over maybe a 5-year period.
Yeah. It's great, isn't it? Don't let IT hinder your business.
Yeah, and we see that, with a lot of customers, like they've got legacy kit, they can't get off it, and they want to get off it. And actually, IT is, it's a differentiator to a lot of businesses. And if you've got a lot of legacy kit that you're still depreciating and you can't get off it, then actually that's a hindrance to your business.
It needs to be an enabler rather than a restrictor, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about business outcomes here, right? We're not necessarily talking about the actual technology. We're talking about how a commercial model can really drive a different business outcome. And I think that's where we need to get to as an industry, to be honest.
Yeah, that's superb.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something we as a distributor, we've moved from that, the traditional, your credit line, that still exists, but it's not what we're about. And it's how do you move into that different areas of, the transformation of distribution. And we're doing that a bit like you guys are with your offering. But, we've gone from an aggregator to everything as a service. And as a service is our world now. And we have a world-leading platform that's, we built our business around. And that's something that we're looking to bring in Dell APEX to, and help, give people that touch of a button type go-to-market as well. So that ease of doing business, not just with you guys, but also with us. And how do we change that experience for them? And have that cloud-like experience just from as a consumer through distribution as well, which is going to transform a lot as everything develops. So
yeah, that works nicely into the multi-cloud side of it. So I think we've spoken so far about the APEX being a consumption model, but I think your second point now is moving into that kind of the multi-cloud environment. So you've got the hardware, we sorted that out.
Yeah.
So now we've got a huge, great big subscription service with one of the big hyperscalers, with Azure or AWS, Google, whoever. Yeah. So there's a lot of work that you're doing around that.
Yeah, so again, we're just, as we mentioned earlier, we're taking those software titles that we're already kind of well known in the market and making those available in those public cloud marketplaces. So a customer could go into AWS, for example, in the marketplace, see that there's a software-defined storage offer, and they can go ahead and basically request a price for that. But obviously, the key thing is how we work that through, obviously, with our partners and distributors as well.
Yeah.
And actually, that's a good point. I mean, when we talk about engagement, from how do we engage with your teams, and similar with our teams, what's the best way that works for Dell and for APEX, really? So
for APEX, we have what's called the APEX Acceleration Team. So it's like the A team a little bit, but sorry for the cheesiness. But yeah, they're effectively an overlay team that works with our sales force on all kind of APEX-led opportunities. We also have a lot of specialists within our Dell Financial Services team as well. So the key thing is to engage as you normally would, and normally our account teams will pull in the relevant resources to support it. If it's flagged as an APEX opportunity within our iteration of Salesforce, they will see that, get visibility, and they will look to engage anyway. So there's a lot of resource out there to support our partners in those conversations. Obviously, I'm part of that as well myself. The key thing the key thing that I always say is, get the conversation in early, not have it too late in the sales cycle. If you can have it earlier, it's a much more straightforward thing, rather than trying to retrofit it later into a deal, especially when we're talking about the subscription angle of APEX, not the multi-cloud or the hybrid cloud offers.
Yeah. Of course. Definitely lead with APEX. And of course we're going to say that.
I mean, it's a simple conversation. It comes down to a very simple qualification question right at the start, which is, okay, you understand what their challenge is and what they're trying to achieve is. And it's a simple question, yes. Well, ask them, actually, how do you want to consume that? Are you looking to outright purchase? Are you looking for a more flexible financial consumption model? Obviously, the answer is going to be yes every time. Or there are other options as well. But it's a key question, I think, to ask that early in the sales cycle. Going back afterwards can be a bit harder.
Yeah, you've got to remember as well that these customers are already paying for what they consume. The majority of them with the hyperscalers, right? So they're already benefiting from that model, that flexible commercial model. So if they're doing it in the public cloud, why wouldn't they want the opportunity to do it in the private cloud?
Plus, the whole software market's going that route as well, isn't it?
Exactly. So, this is where the market's going. So.
Yeah, we had a presentation a few weeks ago, didn't we, from Lisa Clark and all the Dell employees.
Yes,
a fantastic webinar. Lisa was superb, I have to say. And she was going through a lot of the extensions to the Azure platform. And how that can work with the ACP, the Azure Cloud Platform, and some of the solutions you're developing there, and helping people look at virtual machine migration potentially, which seems to be a lot going on at the moment. But ACP seems to be a very, very strong development.
Yeah, it's something that we've introduced at the end of last year, and we're already seeing fantastic success with it in terms of actual wins. There's some great wins in the UK already, but also in terms of pipeline generation as well. And I think people have really latched on to the whole message around actually, I can take that Azure environment, which actually a lot of customers are heavily embedded in the UK especially, and I can extend that and keep control of it, which is the important thing, in the on-premise environment as well. And I can have then a simplified, IT experience. So I have automation, I have lifecycle management, all as part of that solution. And we can have that either as a subscription, which aligns to the Azure consumption, or if they still want to go down the route of buying it, that's fine as well. But the key thing there, it's about, again, it's giving the customer that they don't have to be an expert in the underlying hardware. It's about actually what's the focus. It's actually the Azure environment, running services on Arc, being able to do things like the migration services, moving different VMs around, and also a lot of people are also invested in modernizing their applications through the containerized environments as well. So you're using services like AKS on Azure. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It develops every single day. There's always something new coming out. So I think people have that familiarity with Azure. Yeah. I know we're picking on the one hyperscaler, but they have that familiarity with that interface, should we say. So then they're more than happy to bring that down and utilize on-premise equipment as well through that same interface, which is just amazing. And I think people have been screaming for a long time to try and find a data center tool to be able to provision their on-premise hardware. Yeah. Then they thought the cloud was it, moved into the cloud, had that tool, but now they're using the same tool to control their on-premise equipment. I think that the whole revolution of that management tool set has been superb. And again, that's one of the things from a Dell point of view. I think you've taken some of the hardware and some of the tool sets, but enhanced them to provide that next level.
We took a lot of the learnings that we had from other platforms that we've developed over the years, so tools like VxRail, and the whole VCE experience that we have, over the last few years, all around the automation and lifecycle management, which really takes the headaches out of the IT teams managing that estate. So we've taken those learnings, integrated it into our cloud platforms. We've done it for Azure. We're doing it for OpenShift. We're also going to have a VMware version as well coming along soon. Now, and this is all about giving the customers, ultimately, a simplified operating experience, and taking away the pain and the headaches of how do I solve for that at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess you've got best of breed technology and a world leading technology in Dell that's underpinning all of that, and it's just making life easier for your customers and our partners and for us. Yeah. So
and it's all using common building blocks as well. So again, it's simplifying the kind of the nuts and bolts management side of things. And it's the first, from an Azure perspective, it's the first and I think it's the only premium solution on the market today, or premier solution, which is, again, a unique for us and a real differentiator. So, some of the advantages that gives customers in terms of having the latest software releases available within a couple of hours of release is really really game changing. Yeah.
It's a fast changing environment.
Very much so.
And the third point, Matt, I think you were starting to elaborate on that earlier, but.
Well, I think if you go back to the three pillars, obviously you've got the public cloud experience, you've got ACP, which is APEX Cloud Platform, and then you've got the APEX subscription piece. Now, the APEX subscription piece is like what we've really talked about. It's one, for ACP, it's about the consistency of that commercial model, because customers are ultimately paying for what they use in the public cloud. So I got asked a question actually of me, why would you pay for what you consume and for the private cloud? And my answer was, well, why wouldn't you? You're doing that in the public cloud. So APEX subscription obviously aligns with ACP. But APEX subscription, just to go back and reiterate, is across the whole of our infrastructure stack. So whether that be server, hyperconverged, backup, storage, we would put an APEX subscription offering across all of that. And again, you look at, what is all that about still? It's still having customers, partners having architectural control.
Yeah.
But it's about having a different way of ultimately consuming that technology. And you go back and say, look, on a CapEx transaction, you don't have that flexibility at all. You're not going to utilize all that capacity, maybe into year 4 and year 5. So why pay for it all now? Always pay for it as you're ultimately consuming it. And look, I think that really becomes a very, very simple message. And I think if we're honest, it probably has been quite complicated over the course of the last 18 months, but we've listened. We've listened to our partners, we've listened to our customers, and we're coming to market now with still the APEX offerings, but they're very simple APEX offerings. And I think that will become a lot easier for ourselves, for our partners, and to ultimately articulate to our customer base as well.
I completely agree. Yeah. So from a partner, a customer, client basis, I get it. I put a little bit of a swing on it. What about managed service providers?
Well, it's a really good question, but a lot of our customers on APEX are managed service providers. But if you take a step back about what they do, they're providing services to whoever, right? Whoever their end user customers are, and it's kind of multi-tenanted, right? So they're providing services from an infrastructure out to a number of different customers. And I think if you look about how actually they make money and what their business model is, a lot of it is about speed to market. So they win a new customer, win a new workload. I need the capacity to be able to provide that service. So on a traditional CapEx model, they may not have that additional capacity because actually it's their risk. If they buy all that technology, they're taking that risk, they're depreciating that asset over a period of time. If it's not being utilized, they can't charge for it, okay? On an APEX subscription model, then they can actually have that equipment with an element of buffer on there. They win the new workload, their buffer capacity is already there. So customer comes on board very, very quickly. Time to market is very quick. They can obviously charge and have a revenue stream very quickly as well. And it gives them the flexibility, right? So if it increases, they can charge more. They have a predefined unit rate cost from Dell, which is contracted on day one, so they know what their future cost per terabyte would be, or their future cost for VM, or whatever it would be. And it's easy for them to cross-charge that back to their end-user customers.
Right.
So again, it simplifies their go-to-market. It also de-risks their go-to-market, because again, they can have the capacity on the floor, which they would be paying for on a CapEx model, but on an APEX subscription model, they're only going to pay for that capacity when they utilize it. And in that particular business model, then if they're utilizing that capacity, they're ultimately charging for that capacity. So it's matching their revenue to their costs, simplistically.
Fabulous. That's great.
Yeah, I think the key things to take away are simple, consistent, flexible, but time to market and time to revenue, right? So it's why wouldn't you move into that model?
And we are seeing a lot of managed service customers come to us, whether they be, some of the big alliance partners or whether they're just, managed service providers. They're coming to us and saying, this model fits my business model. So, it's not, I'm not saying it's an easy sell, but actually it really resonates with that kind of business because, again, you boil it back down. And for me, I'm not a technologist. I work for a technology company. I'm not a technologist, right? I'm a commercial guy. And for me, I look at revenue and costs, and I look at cash flows. And actually, when you're talking to, say, a finance director about that, and he's got, or he or she has a deal on the table. One is a CapEx deal, one is maybe a subscription kind of deal. Well, the subscription kind of deal gives them a lot more flexibility. And again, matching revenue to costs is something that FDs will really look about their cash flow. And that's super important.
Yeah, 100%. I think even, to go a step further back to the partner pieces, there's a really rich partner program around it that, Dell have got. So it's one that we should really take advantage of and make sure that we're leading with APEX, like you say.
Yeah, I mean, the incentive partners are really, really good, I would say. I'm about underselling things. obviously, we'd encourage partners to get in touch with yourselves to discuss the absolute details. But yeah, it's a very rich ecosystem for our partners, not just in terms of obviously the revenue and margin position, but in terms of actually the ability to add value services around it as well. So I think there's plenty of opportunity for partners, not least in revenue, but in terms of service. And a lot of partners are very focused on their service revenues at the end of the day.
Yeah. And relevance to the marketplace, right, as well.
Yeah.
You see, yes, CapEx is continue to grow. Yes, it will do, because the overall market is growing. But actually, where is the biggest portion of the market that's growing quickly is in the subscription side. So actually staying relevant as a partner and having, some more tools in your kit bag, really, and saying, actually, Mr. Customer, we have this particular offer as well. Actually having something on a subscription is beneficial for you for X, Y, Z. It's where the market is ultimately growing as well.
The thing there is what you see is actually a lot of people think the on-premise infrastructure market is declining. It's not. It's just the way that people consume it is changing. So actually, as Matt was saying, the fastest growing part is actually people consuming regular data center IT, but in a cloud operating model as a consumption model. And that's growing faster than anything. And if you add that together with the existing IT on-site infrastructure, it's actually growing at a steady old rate, in line with the actual public cloud spend as well.
Yeah, so need to take advantage of it. End of. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for today. It's been brilliant to talk about that and have an open discussion about all things Apex, and thank you for all your involvement. I think, for us, it's the 3 key points are it was consistent, simple and flexible, and then look at the time to market and time to revenue for our partners. So thanks again, and look forward to having you on the next one. And I think, for a partner perspective, the call to action really is just engage with the Dell team, engage with my team and the Dell team within Arrow, and let's take Apex out to market.